Workers' participation includes different forms of informing and consulting workers about decisions which affect their working conditions, organization of work, and environment in which they work in general. These procedures can take more or less formal form. They can be carried out directly or through elected workers' representatives or through trade union representatives. But what is crucial here is that employer is informing and consulting workers about the different decisions which are taken on the level of the company. It is also important to distinguish workers' participation from collective bargaining. Of course, these two mechanisms have some similarities, but in collective bargaining, workers organized in a trade union are negotiating with the employer about their wages and their working conditions, while in workers' participation, it's less legal procedure, resulting with less legal obligations, but workers are having some kind of a dialogue with the employer about different company decisions which affect their working conditions. European legal framework on workers' participation is set primarily by the Information and Consultation Directive from 2002, which defines general principles or the minimum standards of workers' involvement on company level, which are obligatory for all member states of the European Union. There is also Works Council Directive, which sets workers' rights to be informed and consulted in multinational companies. However, there are also around 15 different European directives which touch on the area of workers' participation, but like I have said, the Information Consultation Directive is the most important of them. On the other hand, different member states have their different labor relation systems and traditions, and some of them had similar mechanisms even before the directive was adopted. So some countries have traditions of works councils or different other similar mechanisms or procedures, while some member states first time experience this kind of procedures after they had to harmonize their labor legislation with the Information and Consultation Directive. Of course, benefits of workers' presentation for workers themselves are fairly obvious. Of course, workers have the interest to be informed and consulted on decisions which affect their working environment, their conditions in which they work, and so on. But it is often neglected that that workers' participation is also beneficial for the employers. Research in many countries has shown and proved that companies who implement workers' participation, companies who include workers in developing and implementing different company level decisions tend to have more satisfied workers, more productive working environment, and are therefore coping better with the market, and especially with different critical situations which are happening from time to time. Eventually, I would also say that the benefits of workers' participation apply also to the society as a whole, because society in which workers are included also in the economic sphere, the society which develops democracy on the workplace is better equipped to cope with different critical situations, with different crises which we are experiencing more and more in recent years. And eventually, Eventually, this leads to workers which are more satisfied with their jobs, more productive, and which are giving more support to the economic activity as a whole. Agricultural work, I will start from the beginning. Agricultural sector employs around 10 million workers in the European Union, and it accounts for around 1.4% of European GDP. Its relative size and the size it has in employment are different in different member states. Also, the products which agricultural sector is producing are different. But what is common to all European countries is that agriculture is considered strategically important sector because of course, all countries care about ensuring that there is sufficient food supply. And in all countries, there is still important, although sometimes small, but it's still important part of population which lives in the rural areas and directly or indirectly depends on agriculture. Today, agricultural sector is faced with many different challenges, especially those related to climate change, to technological development, and also European Union's efforts to develop economically and environmentally sustainable agriculture. Common agricultural policy of European Union is one of the most important European policies, and it accounts for approximately 1/3 of European Union budget. Speaking about labor relations in agriculture, they are first of all characterized by high proportion of precarious, unsafe, and sometimes even illegal working conditions, which especially applies to seasonal and migrant workers. In many countries, big share of employment in agriculture accounts on seasonal and migrant foreign workers. So in general, working conditions are very diverse. They depend on a type of agricultural activity, on the products which are produced in specific companies, on the level of mechanization, and so on. But work in agriculture is very often physically demanding. It is also very much influenced by the weather conditions, by the seasonality, of course, of production, and like I said, level of mechanization. It is also important to say that agriculture records more workplace accidents and illnesses than most of the other sectors of economy. And reasons for that include physical effort, use of machines, also use of different chemicals, and exposure to natural elements. COVID-19 pandemics has strongly influenced agriculture in all countries covered by our project and the research we carried out, but its effects on workers' participation were mixed. Of course, agriculture was one of those sectors which couldn't stop operating during the first months of pandemic, when many other sectors went to lockdown and temporarily closed. The production of food had to continue. People had to continue working. And considering that this is the sector in which there is a lot of physical work, in which it is difficult to avoid social contact between workers, there was a big challenge to implement different safety measures and to reorganize work so that it can continue in these new circumstances. Now, in this situation, in some cases, in some companies, the result was worsening of the situation in workers' participation. The usual mechanisms for informing and consulting workers were suspended, mostly as a result of suspending the physical contacts between workers. But we have also found out that there was a number, even significant number of cases where this critical situation led to improvement of workers' participation practices. These were situations where employers and workers' representatives understood that crisis is a situation which requires dialogue, and that through dialogue and through joint work, this kind of situation can be more easily overcome. More concretely speaking, we have recorded some positive developments in workers' participation in Italy, some negative ones in Spain, and mixed results in countries such as Poland and Romania. Through our research as part of our project, we have came to a number of different examples where workers' participation was, I would say, smartly and efficiently used during the COVID pandemics. These cases included, on the one hand, situations where companies needed to develop and implement new safety measures, new measures related to hygienic standards, to social distances, to general safety at work. And we saw many examples where asking workers for their ideas on in design of these measures and their support in implementation of these measures resulted with much more practical, much more efficient measures, and of course with a much stronger and more efficient implementation of these measures. Second field in which there was a lot of discussions and dialogue was relating to maintaining the standards of workers' rights which were present before the crisis. Many companies confronted a significant challenge here because their business operations, if they were not shut down, they had to slow down. The sales were not so big, the income was not so big as before, and companies had to struggle to respect their obligations to workers. And in these kind of cases, dialogue was essential in agreeing some permanent regimes where maybe some temporary regimes where some of the workers' rights would maybe be suspended, but only temporarily in limits which were agreed and accepted by the workers as a necessity. And this later proved very important to the companies because very soon after we went out of the pandemics, many countries experienced big problems on the labor market, big problems in finding needed workers. And this dialogue with the workers enabled companies to keep workers employed during lockdown and first phase of pandemic. If this wouldn't have happened, companies would struggle very much after pandemics to find and to recruit again workers which they have lost. So these are the two most typical areas where we saw the biggest number of examples of concrete good practices. European agriculture is the only major economic system in the world which has managed to significantly decrease its level of greenhouse gas emissions in last 35 years. This decrease has been approximately 20%. However, agriculture still remains one of the main drivers of climate change and environmental degradation in Europe, and it is responsible for around 10% of greenhouse gas emissions in Europe. So at the moment, there are two important aspects here to consider. On the one hand, agricultural workers today are already feeling very directly consequences of climate change. consequences which we all see and feel, but which are especially a significant challenge when you work outside, outside no matter what weather conditions are and which season of the year. The reason often you have to work in the hottest season of the year. So the consequences of hydrogeological instability, of land degradation, soil erosion, general instability of weather conditions, they are already very strongly influencing the workers in agriculture and creating the need to adopt organization of work, equipment which is used to introduce new safety measures, maybe new working regime, different organization of working time, and so on. All this is at the moment already leading to increased risks for workers' health through increased exposure to extreme temperatures, exposure to air pollution, risks from heat exhaustion, dehydration, and the different heat-related injuries, especially. So agriculture currently has a very big need to adapt, to be flexible, so that it can continue to operate in this extreme and fluctuating weather conditions, and at the same time to keep workers safe and protected from different risks. So this is the aspect of the climate change. The second aspect are climate policies. So these are different measures which European Union and member states are introducing in order to slow down climate change. At the moment, we know that we can't stop climate change. What we are hoping to do is to slow it down and to keep it in the limits which our ecosystems and Earth as such can survive, let's say it like this. These policies are affecting agriculture very much because agriculture is one of the sectors with high share of so-called brown jobs. These are jobs which concern highly polluting activities and jobs which will require significant structural changes in order to become climate neutral, in order to so that these activities can continue, but without harm to environment. This means that there is a lot of jobs in agriculture which will have to change, in which different techniques, different machines will be used in the future as our effort to reduce our effect on the environment. And consequentially, there will be big need for the workers to develop new skills and to change the way in which they do their work. And now, especially considering that agriculture is a sector with quite low education level in a big part of workers, this will all present a very significant challenge to the sector. Climate transition, including both adaptation to climate changes and design and implementation of policies which are aimed to prevent further climate change, this transition needs to be socially fair. This means that that costs of this transition needs to be fairly distributed among different social groups, and this requires that European Union and member states adopt measures and provide financial mechanisms, financial support, which are needed to protect workers whose jobs are going to disappear, and even bigger number of workers whose jobs are going to change significantly and therefore require education, development of new skills, and so on. What we know for sure is that climate change like many other transitions, if it is not controlled, if it is left just to the forces of the market, then it can have very serious regressive distributional effects. This means that those who are already most vulnerable, who already work on the low-paid, insecure jobs, would pay the highest price of our climate transition or green transition, and those who are richest and who are actually most responsible for degradation of environment and climate change would pay the lowest price because they're best equipped to cope with all these changes. Therefore, the process requires significant level of control and support from European Union and member states, because it just accept the fact that it wouldn't be fair. It can't work unless it is fair and unless workers are included and treated fairly, because otherwise it won't be possible to make this transition. Otherwise, people just won't accept it and won't participate in this, and we need all of our societies to help and to support this transition. Research, which we carried out as part of our project, confirmed our initial hypothesis that workers' participation is less developed in agriculture than in most of the other economic sectors. Reasons for this, which we have identified, include predominance of insecure working conditions, big share of seasonal and migrant workers, small share of workers organized in the trade union, and also big share of workers who work in small companies, which are less likely to have trade unions, workers' participation procedures, and so on. On top of this, in many countries, like I have said already, agriculture is currently facing serious economic, demographic, and climate challenges, and this often keeps the focus of the stakeholders away from workers' participation, because they think we have other challenges to address than including the workers. But the truth is that these challenges should actually be additional motivation to include the workers and to consult workers and to jointly with the workers try to address these issues. Now, one part of our research also included our attempt to identify proposals from stakeholders how to improve workers' participation in agriculture, and we have collected a number of such proposals. They go from improving the legal framework on European and or national level by extending the scope of issues which come under information and consultation obligations of the employers, ensuring better transparency of information, including stronger protection for workers' representatives against any kind of unfair treatment, and so on. Also, we identified proposals such as establishing agreements between social partners on how workers' participation should work in practice in agriculture, because this can help us to get concrete solutions which are more tailored to the specific conditions in the agriculture than what we can expect from the law to set. Then it's also important to inform workers on their rights through different campaigns, training materials, and so on, because we saw that in agriculture there is a lot of workers who are in general very poorly aware of their workers' rights, and then this includes also their rights to be informed and consulted. Also, the awareness of employers on mutual benefits of workers' participation for both sides should be raised. through also different information, educational activities, and so on. It will be useful to document, disseminate, promote concrete examples of good practice, and also it will be very useful and important to increase awareness of both workers and employers on the effects of climate change on agriculture, and especially on ways how dialogue, cooperation, workers' participation can help companies to deal with those challenges. Workers' participation can work efficiently in practice only if it is carried out in good faith by both parties and if it is supported by the corporate climate which encourages dialogue, expression of ideas, and so on. Now, in case of specific company which would like to set up such workers' participation mechanisms, such procedures for informing and consulting the workers, the obvious start is first to agree how these procedures should look. So for a start, we need representatives of employers and representatives of workers, which can be either the trade union or some representatives specifically elected on these workers. They need to sit down and try to agree how this concept would best work in their company. Ideally, this would take a form of some kind of written agreement in which they would specify in more detail the things which the European and national legal systems say about workers' participation, and agree, for example, which topics should be the subject of informing the workers, on which topics should the workers be consulted, so their opinion would be asked before the decision is taken, and also which form this would take in practice. Are these some periodic meetings between two sides? Is this maybe taking form in writing, exchange of letters or emails, or something else? Also, the mechanism for electing the workers' representatives in the process, if it is not already set by the national legislation or tradition of industrial relations, then it's also a good idea to include it in such a formal agreement. And then, as a next step, both sides, they need to test this in practice. They need to take few concrete examples. Is it new organization of working time? Is it a plan for holidays? Is it introduction of some new technology in the company? And they should try to have a dialogue and exchange of opinions in this, and then eventually they should accept this as something which is part of the corporate culture and which is a normal thing to do when some changes are introduced in the company. And finally, regarding support in finding ideas and cases of good practice, materials which we developed through this project, including the practical manual on enhancing workers' participation in agriculture, the e-platform learning, and other information and education materials are a good place to start for any interested representative of employers or workers in agriculture who wants to develop from the scratch or improve existing mechanisms for workers' participation on a company level.